Society has decided that if you do not want to pack a bag and cross an ocean, you are fundamentally uncurious. They tell you travel is the ultimate mechanism for self-discovery. But when you look at an itinerary, you do not see an adventure. You see an engineered disruption of a perfectly optimized ecosystem. You are not lacking intellectual curiosity. You are simply unwilling to pay the tax of environmental chaos just to photograph a building you could study in high definition from your desk. This is the true psychological reality of the non-traveler. It is rarely about a phobia. It is a calibrated nervous system response to the inefficient surrender of physical control. We are told relentlessly that leaving your comfort zone is the only way to grow. But for a specific psychological architecture, the comfort zone is not a place of lazy stagnation. It is a meticulously constructed fortress of absolute predictability. Your home, your established routine, and your immediate geography are not limitations. They are direct extensions of your cognitive processing. When someone tells you about their transformative 2 weeks abroad, you do not feel envy. You feel mentally exhausted just visualizing the ambient friction, the delayed flights, the chaotic language barriers, the performative, mandatory awe. You look at the modern imperative to travel, and you see it for what it frequently is, a frantic, expensive attempt to escape an internal baseline most people cannot tolerate sitting with. You, on the other hand, have absolutely no desire to escape your baseline. You have spent years carefully curating it. Why dismantle your equilibrium just to prove you are open-minded? Let us look closely at the underlying mechanics of spatial transition. To the average brain, a sudden shift in environment triggers a dopamine spike. Novelty is deeply stimulating for the typical traveler. But your neurobiology processes environmental novelty entirely differently. For you, unfamiliarity is never a reward. It is an ambient, heavy cognitive load. Every new street layout, every unknown social script, and every minor disruption requires active processing. You are forced to abruptly move from automatic pilot into manual operation for every minor task. Most people interpret this high-friction state as living in the moment. Your brain interprets it as a glaringly inefficient use of cognitive bandwidth. You prefer to spend mental currency on complex internal landscapes, not on figuring out transit maps in a language you do not speak. This brings us directly to the psychological architecture of control. There is a profound, stabilizing comfort in absolute spatial mastery. When you know exactly where everything is, how long every route takes, and what to expect, your nervous system rests at a baseline of zero threat. This is not a character deficiency. It is a highly successful evolutionary survival strategy. Some nervous systems survive through constant motion. Others survive by achieving total environmental mastery. You have anchored your entire identity to the bedrock of stability. To travel is to willingly relinquish that mastery and submit entirely to the unpredictable whims of an unfamiliar environment. For a mind that heavily values precision over surprise, this voluntary submission feels entirely irrational. Then there is the crushing, performative burden of the modern journey. Travel is rarely just about physical movement anymore. It is morphed into an aggressive identity currency. People do not just go to places to experience them. They consume them and broadcast that consumption to signal their worldly sophistication. You find this entire transaction deeply unappealing. When pressured into a trip, the sheer exhaustion does not just come from the physical transit. It comes from the heavy, unspoken expectation that you must be fundamentally changed by the experience. You are supposed to have a profound epiphany while staring at a monument. You are supposed to return home with a broader perspective. But you know the quiet truth about yourself. Changing your time zone for 7 days does not alter your core psychological framework. But here's where the entire dynamic fractures and turns back on you. What if your stubborn refusal to leave your immediate perimeter is no longer just about optimizing efficiency? What if your highly curated stability has slowly mutated into an invisible cage, one you defend by calling it a preference? we have to examine the shadow side of total predictability. When you successfully eliminate all environmental friction, you also eliminate the unexpected collisions that force psychological adaptation. A nervous system that never faces unscripted stress slowly lowers its baseline threshold for tolerance. Over time, the world outside your perimeter does not just feel inefficient, it starts to feel actively hostile and dangerous. You might notice your preferred radius of operation is gradually shrinking. You tell yourself you just prefer the comfort of your bed. You tell yourself you just hate the logistics of packing. But beneath the rationalization, a quiet avoidance protocol has installed itself in your operating system. You are no longer actively choosing to stay home because it is better. You are passively defending yourself against the perceived threat of the unknown. Consider the dangerous societal romanticization of displacement. We have collectively elevated the wanderer to the absolute top of the cultural hierarchy. The person always in motion is presumed to be deeper, more empathetic, and more alive. But perpetual motion is very often just highly socially acceptable avoidance. It is incredibly easy to reinvent yourself every 3 days in a new city where nobody knows your history. It is infinitely more difficult to stay in one place, face the people who intimately know your flaws, and build a sustainable reality. You are doing the unglamorous heavy lifting of staying. You are confronting the daily, repetitive reality of your actual life, while the traveler gets a brief holiday from theirs. Your refusal to flee your reality is a different kind of bravery. This is the permanent tension you are forced to live in. You already possess a shockingly rich, vastly expansive internal world. You freely explore complex philosophical concepts, devour histories, and navigate creative landscapes without leaving your chair. Your mind is traveling constantly. Because your internal exploration is so incredibly vast, you feel absolutely no deficit when it comes to physical movement. Yet society aggressively insists that your life is somehow pitifully narrow. It is exhausting to constantly defend your deliberate stillness in a world that worships perpetual motion. You are not broken simply for finding peace in the highly familiar. There is a quiet, untouchable dignity in knowing exactly who you are and not needing a custom stamp to validate your existence. We must untangle the genuine preference from the creeping pathology. If you are fiercely staying home strictly because you are terrified of the unpredictable world, that is a perimeter that needs to be breached. A shrinking comfort zone eventually becomes a psychological prison. No amount of intellectual rationalization will save you from the isolation it breeds. But if you are staying home because your internal baseline is already deeply optimized and fulfilling, you must immediately stop apologizing for it. Stop letting a profitable travel industry dictate what constitutes a meaningful human life. You have built an environment that perfectly supports your unique psychological architecture. You've achieved the exact emotional peace that most people are desperately trying to find by dragging a suitcase through a crowded terminal. Your physical geography remains static, but your conscious awareness does not have to be limited. The task now is to ensure that your physical stillness remains a highly deliberate choice, not a reactive defense mechanism. Protect your peace relentlessly, but always interrogate your walls. Examine the boundary lines you have carefully drawn around your daily life. Are they keeping you safe from unnecessary chaos? Or are they secretly keeping you hidden from entirely necessary growth?